welcome everybody to Illuminate, Navigate, Radiate, Journey of Emotional Resilience. I'm your host, Brandon. Michael's joining us for another episode of our Navigating Substance Use series. So how you doing this morning, Michael?
Fantastic, as always. Always a pleasure.
Awesome, man. Well, I mean, this has been an awesome ride. Before going into our conversation today, all about marijuana, weed, ganja, cannabis, whatever you want to call it. This has been really awesome to just like do this with you, have these conversations, catch up, hear other people's stories and their journeys, but really just start creating this community of mental health awareness and self growth and self discovery and resilience and just everything that we've been talking about and doing. It's been a lot of fun. I felt really good about everything that we get to have a conversation about. And then I'm really just looking forward to reflecting. We're like 3 months in, or almost 3 full months in, and it's just like we've been able to keep it up. Kind of baffles me sometimes, but we've been able to do it. Three videos a week and a bunch of different sessions and conversations. And I just wanted to say I appreciate you doing it with me and being on this path and this awesome project with me as well.
Wow, thanks. I appreciate it. I think that I'm as grateful to you as you are to me, because when you first reached out about kind of what you were trying to do, I just felt like it was something that I wanted to make sure I could be a part of in any way possible. And I'm grateful that you've included me in such a capacity as you have. If you need to kick me to the curb at any time, just let me know. But
No, I'm
I
serious.
definitely
No.
click. But no, I do appreciate the opportunity to continue to reconnect, go over things that we would have probably never talked about, at least in our college days. So it's been really cool to reconnect and learn more about each other. Really, just kind of pick back up the relationship after 14 years, which most people may not be able to relate to, because that's a pretty cool thing. So I've been learning myself, and it's crazy the journey I've been on over the past several years, and even now the past few months we've been doing this. I feel like I've taken pretty big strides in my own mental health and my own growth, and I think that's the goal of the whole project, is not just to build a community, but build a community of people trying to grow. And I feel like that's what I've been able to do. So thank you as well.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome. And I think one topic that we can pick back up on, because we spent so much time with it, is weed. Is this conversation around marijuana and the impacts it can have, and the good and the bad as well, but that it can have on us. So I mean, I'm excited to go into this one with you. I feel like we just kind of knew there was a moment. It was just like, all right, yeah, this guy smokes and I smoke, and and so then it just kind of rolled from there. And weed has had such a big impact on my life. And I started smoking pretty regularly about 15. And I honestly, I had a lot of fun with it. I can look back at some of the times, and most of like really good times were just using marijuana, were just smoking. When I started to add the hard drugs into it, or the alcohol, that's usually where things got a little fuzzy or whatever. But like there was a lot of good moments, and I think I really went with it because it did help me feel better about myself in those moments that I was smoking. I was less self-conscious. Like I never really got too paranoid. I got a little paranoid at times, especially when I first started smoking, but I was just able to relax a little bit. I was able to turn off like my mind of, all these doubts that I had and all this depression that I had and all these negative things that I have. So even though I don't currently smoke, I think going back to our topic last week, in moderation, marijuana can have a positive impact on people. It's just, when we overdo it, when I overdid it greatly, from the time I woke up until I passed out with a bowl or blunt or something in my hand. That's probably a little bit too much, but I think there definitely can be some positives and some negatives depending on how we use it or why we're using it. So I think this is a fun conversation to have with you.
Absolutely. I know that Yeah, it's pretty much, a week or two in, I think we kind of, like you said, that sense of what's the bigger connection outside of just playing soccer. And, it just took that first night where we were both able to get it, first of all, in the little tiny corner of West Virginia where we're at. We got it. And then when we did get it, it was like, okay, cool. This is, um, what's up? Like, so it was a great time to enjoy. And I think, like you said, speaking of how it can be positive or negative, I think focusing on some of the positive, which, some people may or may not agree, but I know for me, there was a lot of positive with it because it was something that we were doing similar to when people go out and drink and have a drink, except we were just chilling, having a smoke instead. And yeah, we didn't hurt anybody. We weren't really in a position to damage or harm anybody. We were really just enjoying being friends, hanging out. And whether it was, playing FIFA, I think we had a few maybe Guitar Hero or Rock Band nights as well. We were just enjoying the college experience and it just kind of enhanced it. And I think that that was a cool part of it because, yeah, it was something besides just being there that allowed us to, like you said, unleash a little bit of the stress that maybe causes our day to day lives to go a certain way. And being a college athlete, keeping up grades, no matter what anybody tells you, it's not an easy thing to do. And falling into harder stuff, which ultimately I know, happened leading up to that before, it was all fun. And it was, I think, positive despite some of the negative, I guess, connotations that went with it early on. We knew that we weren't really doing anything other than having a good time. So I think that that's kind of what we ran with. And I'll be honest, as much as I'm grateful for you kind of coming to where you are, I was very enjoyable and I really enjoyed all the moments we had when we were smoking.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%, man. And I think especially, looking at the way it's viewed today is way different than it was viewed when me and you were, when we first met and we were smoking, especially in West Virginia. I mean, it's probably still a little bit, less progressive as it is in Michigan or in other states, in West Virginia. Um, but it was exactly that. I look at some of the really crazy nights that we had, um, a lot of them started off with like us smoking and then everybody else would come back drunk and then it would get crazy. Like we were just chilling. Like I remember the one night the huge brawl broke out, between the soccer team and the baseball team, and me and you were just stoned in the dorm room, and one of our teammates come busting in because everybody just got back from the bar, and he was like, "Yo, you guys gotta get out here. We're all fighting right now." And it's like, what? Man, don't kill my high right now. Don't kill my buzz. But we just it was a lot of fun. And it I think it helps build a really good relationship. And I think, like you said, there's so much stress there with being a college athlete and, trying to keep your grades up and just in a lot of other different things in life that we were able to relax at times and we were able to just chill and not really do something that's harmful. Especially, I feel like that all the times I made bad decisions, maybe I was smoking a little bit at the time, but it was definitely influenced by alcohol or by hard drugs that I then made those bad decisions. Because I remember all the times that I was just smoking with like you or, some of our other friends, like we would just smoke a bunch, eat a bunch, laugh a bunch, and then pass out. And that's kind of what it was. But it was just, it was like it was freeing, I think, at times. And it wasn't, it wasn't until like, later on, especially after I dropped out and I started chasing that high of hard drugs, that I had to like smoke 24/7 in order to deal with things. But initially, um and even then, like I said, I still think there's a lot of positives to it. I think it's healthier than drinking at times. I think, it's probably better to be a pothead than alcoholic, and maybe some people would disagree with me in saying that, but I mean, I just, in harming different things or yourself or other people, most of the time people smoke a bunch of weed. They're sitting on their couch watching something stupid, eating a bunch of food. So I think there can be different mindsets to it, and I'm glad it's becoming more acceptable. I mean, it definitely, I feel like, hindered our ability to enjoy it a little bit when it was like, I feel like we were probably people would secretly smoke with us. didn't want other people to know. But everybody just looked at us like, oh my gosh, these stoners, and now it's just like, oh yeah, you smoke weed? All right, yeah, so does 99% of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what you said there, and I think maybe even partly some of it was me as I started to see kind of that, I'll just say, resistance to the idea of it. Because yeah, back then, 14, 15 years ago, especially in a state like West Virginia, it was just a very serious offense still, even just to have it. So consuming it was almost don't do it type of situation where a lot of the, whether it was players on our team, maybe some of the athletic staff, it was just as soon as kind of word got out that we were in ingesting this substance, if you will, they were just not so happy about it. And even the ones that maybe, like you said, would on the low want to do it in public, they were like, I never done it, never will. Don't bring up that night. I never did. And it's just kind of one of those where, yeah, we understood that we were kind of out on a limb there because a lot of the soccer players, a lot of the athletes, for the most part in that time frame, that time period, they were maybe drinking, but they weren't really doing that. Maybe not as much understanding about it. I know alcohol's been around forever in this sense of how drinking is and the laws that go with it. Marijuana is a much more recent development for how it can benefit you and that type of legality of it. So I know that it was never, it was, I'll just say it was a challenge when we were trying to be ourselves. And so, like you said, it maybe hindered a little bit of that fun for us and the overall, I guess, medicinal benefit we kind of were getting from it. Because for me, I was never getting high just to get as high as I could so I could sit in my room and just be high. Like it was because we were hanging out, we were together as opposed to drinking, we were smoking. And then that really helped me kind of enjoy more with the college life of just kind of the routine of wake up, go to class, go to practice, study for tests, do it all over again. But I wasn't pounding alcohol into my system. So it felt like it was a healthier alternative. But at the same time, kind of where it said, where you said it led you eventually. Yeah, if you're waking up first thing in the morning, the wake and bake is, it's called. And then 2 hours later on the hour, every 2 hours, blunt bong joint, repeat, blunt bong joint, repeat, 6 p.m., haven't done anything but smoke. That's possibly where you now are an alcoholic, but for weed. So that's where I would say it can start to cross over into not necessarily being so positive. And I think that's where you may have experienced it too, Brandon, where it kind of led to other things. It allowed you to kind of try other things or feel, okay, cool, I got this high. I want a little bit more. Maybe I'll try this with it. And then that first time of whatever it may be kind of leads you down a path of where, okay, now I need to get that type of high because, marijuana wasn't going to do that for me anymore. And I think that that's really where you cross over from being healthy and fun to unhealthy and not fun and negative. And I think that's where the balance needs to come in. A great reference back to a previous one, and I think we've talked about it before, is really moderation. And I think that if you can have moderation when it comes to anything, but specifically the consumption of marijuana, you'll find that you can control it. But if you feel like you're not in control and it's controlling you, I think that's when we really need to step back, shed a little light on our situation, and determine what's the reason that we're consuming the substance. Is the reason because I'm just miserable with life and I'm just going to smoke all day? Okay, maybe that's something that we need to talk to somebody about. If it's like, hey, I just worked 10 hours a day, all I do is smoke at the end of my day, one or two times a night, and on my off days, that sounds like you might be in control of it. And if it's not affecting your family, it's not affecting your friends, then I would encourage you to explore that option because it is becoming more widely accepted, not just recreationally, but of course medically as well. So that's where I see value in it actually being a benefit as opposed to a lot of those connotations of just like, bro, you smoke. It can't be good for you. And I get that because, yeah, you are inhaling a substance, but if you're going to inhale something, marijuana is, I'd say, the one that you could be a lot better with than anything else that you might inhale.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think about because like even where I live, driving down the highway, every other billboard's a weed shop. Like it's just crazy to see that how it's evolved and how it has become more acceptable. Because I think also in that sense, kind of mentioning almost that idea of it being a gateway drug, right? That's something that's always been talked about. And I've really thought about that question because I wonder, is that what it was for me? And I think to an extent, the reason behind I was getting high was to escape myself and to numb feelings and to really be a cure to my insecurities and all the things I had going on the inside. I think that's where it could be a gateway. I also think it's a gateway because I mean sometimes it does put you around people that you wouldn't normally be around, or people that are doing other stuff. And that was really my experience with like trying almost every new thing I tried. It was with some people smoking weed, and then somebody, hey, try this too. And I'm like, yeah, why not? So, I think in those different senses, it can be, but I mean, I think that's important, kind of what you said, with the way you were viewing it in that moment was like, I'm hanging out with a bunch of people just smoking and having a good time. And I remember you weren't the biggest of drinkers, like, myself or the majority of our teammates were. And so that was kind of how you viewed it, where I was I was right next to you. And in my mind, it was like, oh, I'm just going to get as messed up as possible because I don't want to feel like myself. I want to feel a different feeling. I don't want to be in my own head. I don't want to be in my own body. And getting high took me away from that. And, eventually that's just, what I did. I got high literally 24/7 for years, with smoking. And right before it's kind of weird because like weed was the first thing I quit. And that was, I remember I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is a huge problem because I stopped smoking weed for heroin. I wouldn't waste any money that could possibly go to heroin on weed. So I'd stopped smoking like almost 2 months before I got clean. Which was just crazy to me because that was such a huge part of what I felt like I was about, and a huge part of me as a person was like I smoked weed. And that's why, being completely clean and not smoking anymore, I still see a lot of benefits to it. But like you said, if it's affecting your life, that's where you want to take a look at it. I think it's completely okay to like turn off for a minute, right? Smoke a bowl, the joint, whatever your preference is in smoking, because there's so many. Or I mean, it's not even smoking anymore. You can vape it, you can eat it, I mean, there's there's a lot of different things nowadays. But when you can do that after a hard day's work and that's the way you relax, cool. As long as it's not affecting what you're doing. But if you're just I was a lazy stoner at certain points in my life where it was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna sit on the couch and I'm gonna roll blunt after blunt and just sit here, pass out, smoke till I pass out again, wake up. Like I think there was one time we were in a circle smoking and like people would wake me up just to take my hit. Like I was passing out while I was smoking. And so I think when you get to that point, probably should take a look at it, when it's starting to affect, different things around you, or if it's holding you back. And, I think at times for people, it could definitely be something that holds you back. Society wise, I think that was a bigger thing when, like I said, when we first started smoking back then, because it was like every job, you couldn't get any type of job if you had weed in your system. People just wouldn't accept you if they knew you smoked weed or, whatever it was. And today that's really open. But I think if it's holding you back, emotionally, mentally, being able to grow in those different capacities that smoking or getting high can take you away from, that's where you want to have just a little, check in on your relationship with weed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely a good way to put it. Kind of looking in the mirror and having a conversation with yourself about marijuana in that type of situation. Look, you've been good to me. We've been good friends. We went through a lot together. But if I'm just waking up to get high so that I can fall asleep and wake up to get high again, then yeah, I think that that's the point where it's crossed the line. Now, granted, if you're paying all the bills and nothing's happening, and it's your day off, and you just want to do that all day because that's how you release, that's how you get away from your day-to-day struggles. I'm still a firm believer if you can consume it as much as you want if you're not going out on the road and causing accidents, if you're not supposed to be taking care of your kids and then, you neglect them or you don't feed them, things like that. If that type of stuff isn't happening, then I'd say the amount or the level of consumption is not going to really matter as much. And, if you get to a point where you're like some of the big names in the game, like Willie Nelson or Snoop Dogg, yeah, you're going to find a way to incorporate it in your life every day for the rest of your life. He's been on talk show hosts, he's been in the White House high the whole time, but clearly still doing what he's supposed to be doing. It's not negatively affecting anybody. And he's got such a cool rep about him that I think that he's found a great way to balance that type of, I'm going to be known for this, but I'm still going to be me, and I'm not going to let it really affect who I am or how people view me. And if it does affect how they view me, forget them, because I'm still doing me. And I think that I like that part about how sometimes you can identify with what you do and own it. I think for a while I was even afraid of it a little bit after. Like, I didn't want people to know, I was kind of like, yo, let's not announce it to the world. I trying to be inconspicuous here. When in reality, own it. If people aren't going to accept you for the things you do, as long as what you're doing isn't hurting them, then maybe that's not someone that is important or as important as they would be if someone who does care about you but doesn't care what you do. Like, I don't care if you want to smoke. You're not smoking around me and causing me to do something I don't want to do. So for all I care, you're cool. But for me, I know there was a time where I was similar to kind of what you, I guess, were talking about, where I would just kind of see the lazy side of it because I would wake up and want to just smoke. And then instead of going to do what I maybe should have been doing, I'd want to smoke again. And I think what it was is, and I'm grateful that really marijuana is not addictive in the sense of the substance itself, but the feeling, that high feeling, is something you can really start to chase. And so I remember times like, okay, cool, every 3 hours on the hour, I'm going to make sure I re-up, basically. And that was something that I kind of got in the habit to after college, where I was just doing it all the time. I was still doing enough to where maybe it wasn't noticeable, and my relationships at home and friends were still good. There was no lapse. I wasn't isolating really because of it. I wasn't causing myself to do anything that I wouldn't normally have done otherwise. But I still remember kind of thinking back, like, it's more controlling me than I'm controlling it. And then I stopped for a while. And I know that that's where I'm most grateful, because as you were able to do with a very hard drug, it's not so easy to do when there's chemicals involved that kind of replace chemicals in your body, as heroin would do, where you're like, dang, I kind of can't, I can quit and I can tell myself I can, but I'm still itching for it. Marijuana, after a few days of not having it, and unless you're doing other things with it, it's really not that difficult to get off of. It's really that feeling that you chase. So that's where I kind of learned that I can control this. And I'm grateful that the health benefits of it, or how it affects the body, is such a reasonable way to be able to get off of it if you have to. And I know when you quit, while you were like, I remember you telling me, I have to never smoke again if I'm ever going to get clean. And I think that that's a powerful thing to say, especially with how it was defining kind of how we met and just your life leading up to that point and throughout. So that's where I applaud you, because you were dealing with not just that, but also something else. But just being able to say, I can't do this anymore for the betterment of my life and then my potential future family's life, that's where I think that we can really radiate that to other people, because a lot of people might not realize how powerful that can be. And even hearing that, when it came down and when you said that, it just made me be so grateful for how I just focused on marijuana, and knowing that if something were to happen, I could cut it out and I wouldn't really be affected. So it kind of, in a way, really helped remind me, like, hey, this is okay to do, and I can quit if I have to. It just really has to make sure that I'm doing it in the right capacity and I'm not doing too much and getting to a point where it's really affecting me in a negative way.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate what you said there. Like, just, in my relationship with it, and as you said that, I kind of thought about it, and like, it's always, whenever somebody wants to like talk about my story or different things like that, it's always like, wow, you got off heroin, like, well, I didn't want to be on heroin, you know. I didn't want to be a junkie with a needle in my arm. Physically, mentally, you know, psychologically, that was definitely like way harder to give up. But like, you know, me being a stoner, I felt like was a big part of my identity. So it was a different battle understanding that I wasn't going to do that again. Right. Because that was more of like, I'm losing a part of me. Like, you know, kind of like you said, is if people told me not to smoke, I wasn't gonna be around those people, you know. And you probably remember me losing a couple relationships over that, and a couple people out of my life, out of my mindset with that. And you know, if somebody knew me back then, it was like, oh yeah, he is a stoner, you know. I mean, he's a big pothead, and you know, and that's just it was kind of part of me, and I didn't mind that so much where obviously, you know, I didn't want people being like, oh yeah, that guy's a heroin addict. And I'm like, yeah, I am, you know. Yeah, right. Hoorah. But it was, you know, it's it is really important. And I think a big thing for me to be able to say, like, you know, you know, if you can smoke and it benefit your life and it's not ruining your life, that's awesome. You know, and I can't do that because I'm in that mindset of when I'm getting high, when I'm chasing a high, when I need to, you know, relax, I immediately lose the moderation and I'm like, time to go hard. And I don't want to fall back into that. I don't even want to take that chance, you know, and I'm like I said, I'm a big advocate. I love seeing that, you know, marijuana is more acceptable because then I think it does take away the gateway aspect of it as well. Then you're not having to go into certain areas to buy drugs or be around certain people to buy drugs. And, you know, you can get it from a store and all that type of stuff. And you don't have to feel so much like a criminal just for smoking a bowl, you know, you don't have to like hide it as much. And I think that's really powerful. And I like that because you know, I do think it's a better alternative than drinking. You know, you think about it like you think about that day you talk about, you know, like you're off work, right? You wanna smoke, you wanna chill, you wanna play some video games. Maybe you have kids and they're gone. Maybe you don't have kids, whatever it is, right? But you have that freedom to do it on that day to where you're not bucking responsibility. If you sit there and drink all day and you do that, there's probably going to be some consequences and some bad decisions made by, you know, noon. Much less past that point you're blacked out. And so I think, you know, I think there's a lot of good to it. But I do think it's important to, you know, have that mindset of like, if I enjoy this a lot, but at the same time it's hurting every other aspect of growth in my life, that's where you do have to kind of have that ability to say, you know what, I gotta eliminate it for a little bit, or I gotta eliminate it forever, and just, you know, that's the relationship I gotta have with it, you know. And but right when you started talking there, you talked about like, you know, looking at yourself in the mirror, having that conversation, like, oh yeah, we've been through it, you know, we've done it together, you know, and that was exactly, I feel like, how I started off my goodbye letter to marijuana when I was in rehab. Was like, man, you were my best friend. You were there for me through everything. But you know, I got to be able to move on and grow in my life. And um, I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. I think when we can look at that and be able to say, yes, I can moderate this and it can benefit me and my life and my mindset, then I can do it. Or if you can look at it and say, you know what, every time I do this, I end up missing work, or I end up blowing somebody off, or I end up spending too much money. You know, so if it's got more of those negatives, then yeah, that might be a time to be like, yeah, I got to step away for a little bit, and that's okay. It's tough to be able to say that and look at that and admit that. But I'm definitely somebody who's comfortable saying, you know what, as much as I think marijuana can improve life if you use it moderately, I know for me it can't, and I just have to accept that and keep going about my day.
That's powerful too, because as much as there are positives to marijuana and what it can do for you, even as far as to the medical sides of healing, whether it's, you know, for cancer patients who don't have an appetite and all of a sudden now they want to eat, or someone who maybe has been going through seizures, and I know some of this is maybe crossing into maybe the CBD side of marijuana, but still being able to help medicinally is really what is so powerful about marijuana, and the possibilities it has, because it's a rare substance where you can get medical benefits and recreational benefits, where both of them aren't going to hurt you if you do it in a way that either is in moderation or is prescribed to you. I know that if you have to take, and I know we talked about opiates, if you're prescribed something like that, yeah, because you're prescribed it, you feel like, okay, cool, I'll be good taking it. But there's just no guarantee that that's going to come out positive because of how serious that type of substance is for you. With marijuana, yeah, you're going to have that feeling of being high. You're more than likely going to get hungry, and then you're going to get sleepy. It's really the main symptoms, and it's rare for something that can be medically beneficial for you to only have that type of effect on you when you are controlling it, because hungry, happy, sleepy, for all you know, it's Cat Williams. That's the three side effects of lighting up, but really that's not bad because you're taking time for yourself or with friends, and and instead of choosing to drink 3 or 4 or 5 alcoholic beverages, you're just taking a different approach with getting high as opposed to it. And I actually am grateful that the world is coming, especially in America, to a more common realization of how it's not so bad. And I know that I read an article maybe a little while back where the I guess the leader, not leader, but the whoever's in charge of the FDA kind of finally came out to say, you know what, marijuana might not be as bad of a drug as we've been telling it out to be, because for a long time it was actually it was higher schedule than some harder drugs that we all know to be a lot more addictive. And that's where I saw the transition to, you know what, they're gonna finally realize that, look, smoking is not killing you if you're doing it in a reputable way. You're not smoking right before you're driving people to school or to work. You're not smoking right before work. You're not smoking before going into surgery as a medical professional. So just like drinking, you're not showing up to work drunk. You're not showing up to events drunk, or you shouldn't be, obviously, if you're trying to be productive with your life. And some people, hey, if you do and you're functional, this is a different conversation. But as far as marijuana goes, I know that I've really seen more benefit than the opposite. And I kind of agree with you. Actually, I 100% agree with you. If you can control it, do it. If you're, similar to Brandon and other people who just, I can't be around it because of the potential implications it could lead to, awesome. But being able to have that conversation and say, you know what, like you said, we've been good together. I'm going to miss you. I wish we could, stay together longer, but for my health benefit and for my future, I need to let you go. And that's a really big thing to be able to do and to stay true to it, because while it's not so addictive, like you said, if you get back into that chasing a high feeling, friends, family, everything you built for the past almost decade now for a night could be tossed out. And I can just see how where you're at now, that's not worth the risk. And if you're in a similar situation, don't risk it. It's not worth it. As good as we're talking about it might be for you, the benefits, the not negative effects, if it's going to negatively affect your life, don't do it. I don't recommend it. But if you're in a good state of mind, you're in a good place, you're not going to have a situation where it's affecting, or you're not doing it to a point where it's affecting your day-to-day life in a negative way, then I'd say there are a lot of positives, and you could definitely get a lot of fulfillment and kind of can enhance your life as it has both of us throughout our lives.
Yeah, no, and just kind of going back to the medical thing to kind of start off, I think that's a really powerful thing, especially you look at our conversation last week about opiates and being prescribed those. And, I've heard some life-changing stories about cancer patients being prescribed marijuana over, different pain relief, or pain control drugs, and being able to eat again and not, be so sick after chemo, and, just really life-changing stuff with that. And I think that shows that benefit of it, right? Or people who are depressed that do it in the right way and do it in the right amount that actually lifts them up. And I've seen people get off hard drugs, and they stayed off hard drugs because they smoked weed. And, I mean, some people may look at him and say, oh, yeah, you're not clean, or, you're not sober, and, you got to be 100% clean or sober or whatever. But like, if they're living a better life, they're working a job, they're having a family, like, but they're not using a needle to shoot up anymore. And I think there's a lot of benefits to it. And really it just comes down to your relationship with that. I think this is one where it really depends on your relationship with it. And if you can moderate it, if you can, like you said, if you can control the urge and the high, then you're in a better place than like me, where that high runs me. That high, once I give into it, it snatches me up, puts me on a leash, and it's got me. And I think that's just an important thing to really look at and be honest with, right? You're probably gonna figure it out through through your own experience, whether it can benefit you or if it's holding you back a little bit. But realize that, have that self-awareness. And if you're kind of like going back and forth in your head, is this a problem? Is this is it not a problem? Then take a couple days, take a week, take a month, get off of it and see just where it puts you, see where you're at. And, I think just as long as you have that honest conversation and outlook on it and relationship with it, then yeah, I think it can add a lot of benefits to life. And like I said, I don't do it anymore. I haven't done it in, over 9 years, but I still am an advocate for it because I've seen it change people's lives in a positive way. I've seen people be really lazy with it, myself included, and it end up hurting their life. But I've probably seen the opposite more. And that's what I think is a little bit different when it comes to marijuana and the impact it can have on people. So I think we are moving in the right direction with it being more acceptable and embracing it a little bit more. Because I think the more we can do that, then the more we get rid of that stigma that it is as bad as hard drugs. Which, I mean, if you're having an honest conversation about drugs, it's not. It's just, there's a big difference, and I've tried almost everything. There's a big difference. And so I think that's just, something that's, good to look at. And if you are struggling and, you're not sure what to do, then yeah, call somebody up, maybe hit an NA meeting, or like I said, just take a break from it and see where you're at, see how it's working for you. But if you're working hard, if you got a family, if you're supporting yourself, if you're successful, if you're happy and you want to partake in a little smoke, partake, enjoy yourself. We got to enjoy life at the same time. Mine is like a bottle of Coca-Cola and a candy bar. And that's my way I have to relax nowadays. But, yeah, I think I was looking forward to this one just because, like I said, our connection kind of like, I think we started connecting before, but right when we knew each other smoked, man, like it was just like, yeah. And it's kind of funny though, because we were a little bit different with it. Like you said, you like smoking and hanging out and everything. I like smoking just to see how high I could get and, see the limits I could push. I feel like I was probably way more open about it than you were at times where it's like, yeah, I'm a stoner. And then it's like, oh man, if you're with Brandon, you're probably smoking weed, and you were like, yo, don't tell this person, yeah, I remember some of those conversations, man. And so it was just, I enjoyed looking back at those fun times because it really was a fun year. And, and I remember one day with like half the school rode through our dorm room to smoke with us. And they're like almost every group after they came in, they were like, yo, don't tell anybody we were in here today. It's like, all right, well, let the next group in on your way out. And so it's just, it's funny how it was socially, just how it was approached back then and to where it is today. And, again, I think I would just encourage you, if you're a smoker, look at that relationship with it. If you're good, if you are still benefiting it, happy, awesome, do it. If you're struggling with it, if you're like using it to kill emotions or you're using it to, be out of yourself and not just to relax, then yeah, have that honest conversation with yourself, reevaluate, and just make that next step.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that I've had a couple of those honest conversations with myself over the years, and I think that it's as crazy as it sounds. What helped me one time is I was for I think 5 or 6 months. I had to quit because I had decided to go back to school, and it was a healthcare related field. And in order to gain acceptance into this, well, I was accepted, but in order to actually enter the program, you had to pass a drug test. And it was in supervision of somebody, so really faking anything was out of the question. And it's serious, man. You're applying for a student loan. You're not trying to mess that up, type of thing. And I think I'm also grateful for knowing that it didn't have that kind of control over me where I was like, I have to keep smoking and I'm gonna find a way around this test. And if I don't pass the test, oh well. It was like, no, I'm going to school, so I'm gonna pass this test. So I'm gonna quit for 6 months so that I don't have to worry about it. And I'm grateful that it's a substance that you can have that approach when it comes to a situation like that. Or at least I feel like if you have that willpower and you haven't been abusing it for a long extended period of time, then yeah. And it's funny, that same night I remember it was like we were running the freaking office. All right, yep. So the next one in, cool. Oh yeah, remember what we said? Don't tell them. Yep, cool. Nobody will know. Half of the campus came right through. Everybody was like, "Yo, who is here?" Don't worry about it. Just hanging out. But it was like the band people. It was the freaking baseball team that we didn't even like. You know what I mean? So it was just funny that it kind of brought people together that we wouldn't expect to bring together. And I think that's another benefit that we maybe didn't talk as much about that I feel like resonates with me, because the people that you would least expect to hang out, the one thing that they might all have in common is they all smoke. And I know one of my really good friends in college didn't play any sports, was playing video games all day, got me into video games, was a computer science major, completely different from what I was doing. Yet here was this common thing that we could both do, where it was a connection. Like you said it before, we spoke about connection. It just allowed you to maybe even be a friend with somebody that you would have never thought would have been anyone you'd ever talk to. So that's where I love the idea of being able to build connections with it, using it in a positive way where you're getting benefit out of your life. And then ultimately, if you're not, yeah, you got to have that serious kind of look yourself in the mirror type of conversation and, determine, is it something that I can keep doing? Or do I need to, like you said, take a break for a day or two? You'd be surprised the insight that can come after a day or two or a week of not doing it. And then that'll really tell you, yeah, this was too much. I need to moderate this, and then determine if you can. Or, you know what? I feel a lot worse now that I'm not doing it and I'm actually lazier. Boom. Maybe you found out that it is more medically beneficial for you, and keep doing it. Find your passion with it, but also at the same time, find your control. So I think this was, like you said, it was a fun one to go over. I know that we kind of went into more than maybe we have in other ones, but I feel like it was worth it because it's definitely one that I think a lot more people can relate to, and a lot more people have at least tried marijuana than I'd say 99% of other things that you can try. So if you're happy and you're able to do it, awesome. If you're unhappy or it's not affecting you, don't do it. That's what's so cool about marijuana. I feel like you have that control.
Yeah, and I want to hit on two things before we wrap up here. Is I really like the fact that you talked about that connection. I'm pretty sure I know exactly who you're talking about, and it really did bring people together. And all types of people, and I think that's one thing I really enjoyed about it. Like I could be in any group of people, and that was because people knew I smoked. And like, if you wanted to get it or if you wanted somebody to smoke with, like I was always down. And so I got to meet a lot of cool people doing that and build a lot of relationships where, I could look at almost any group, or clique or whatever and be like, oh yeah, I smoked with that person or something. And, and be able to understand people at, a different level than what they put on, because you see that where some people, don't always show that side, and so then people look at them differently. But then sometimes when you smoke with somebody, you can just have one of those real conversations and connect on another level. So I do really think that's a big approach. And then the other thing I want to hit on is I think that's like what you said about going into back to school and having to take a drug test, right? And I think that's a really good indicator of where you're at with your relationship, right? Because my mindset in that is like take a bunch of niacin, sweat it out, try it. If you fail the test, cool. That's not what you were supposed to do. Go do something else with your life. And if that's the way you think, you know, then you need to reassess it. But if you can be like, yo, to take this opportunity, to take another step in my life, to have a chance of doing something I want to do, I got to quit this. And so I'm going to quit this and take this opportunity. If it comes back, awesome. If I don't get it, cool. I can go back to it and have that conversation. I think that's where it's like, all right, yeah, you are in more control of that than somebody who's like, oh, no, I'm going to figure a way out of this. I'm going to figure out a way around it. And if I don't, who cares? I'll go on to something else. And so, yeah, so like you said, we definitely went into this one a little bit more than we have some of the other ones, but, I think it can be, there's a lot of benefits to it. And I think, just that negative part of it is if it's negatively affecting you, have that look at yourself, that conversation with yourself, and take that step to make that change. And if it's not, then enjoy it, blaze responsibly, as this one is called. So, this has been Illuminate Navigate Radio. Have a great rest of your day.